Hello, everyone, and welcome to another fantastic Mississippi Library Commission webinar. My name is Kristen Hillman. I'm a library consultant here at the Commission, and we're really excited because we're going to talk about the literacy garden and how it can enhance youth programming. Besides literacy gardening, some of the changes that have occurred this past year, namely a pandemic that shut down a lot of our physical spaces, may have you thinking about outdoor programs. What kind of outdoor options do I have for programming? I don't really want to fill up an inside space with 200 plus people anymore. What can I do outside that would give me some good programming options? So that's what we're going to talk about today. Maybe some outdoor programming, even though the weather is something you need to keep an eye on. Thinking about room and building capacity, maybe a literacy garden or a community garden is a place where you could host programs. If you already have one, we'll give a few ideas about how to host programs outside in your various spaces or creating those spaces if you don't have them. So without further ado, we are going to go ahead and get started talking about what to expect throughout this webinar. As I've said, I'm Kristen. I'm a library consultant. I've been in youth services for 3 years before I came to the commission. I was the services supervisor at Pearl Public Library. And before that, I was an English and history teacher for 12th grade at Morton and Pisgah High School. So I am going to move on to the next slide and let Alex Brower introduce herself and tell you what we can expect. Take it away, Alex.
All right. So as Kristen said, my name is Alex Brower. I'm the Information Services Director here at the Mississippi Library Commission. So before I started here, I worked at a public library in Purvis, and I was a TA and then a GA at the University of Southern Mississippi's SLIS program. So some of you have probably heard my voice before. So today I'm going to talk about, why have a literacy garden in your library, how to get started, getting your community involved. We're going to talk about some programming ideas for, early literacy, K-6, teens, story time, and then creating a seed catalog in your library.
So before we get into literacy gardens, I thought we should maybe talk about what is a literacy garden. There's so many different types of gardens that can happen at your library or in your outdoor space. And pretty much what a literacy garden is defined as is an outdoor space that allows for community outreach. It's a gathering space, so you can gather, your patrons can gather there, the public can gather there. You get the idea. And it's also a space for exploration, so learning, hands-on learning, especially for kids, and reflection. It could allow for opportunities for your patrons or the public to read books there or enjoy the day or just to spend some time in the garden. It also can definitely help a library expand on its mission. Now, a lot of public library missions are reaching out to the public, providing opportunities for the public to learn and for your patrons to come together and just have a space, a good outdoor space. And that can definitely help expand on your whole mission of what your library might be doing. What else can it do? Well, it also allows you to incorporate that hands-on learning like we talked about. It's going to be digging in the dirt. It's going to be learning about how things grow. Maybe it's going to be about just enjoying a program that's watering birds, creating a bird bath, or protecting the environment. There's plenty of hands-on opportunities there. And it's for all ages. Now, who doesn't enjoy a garden? You can enjoy a garden at an adult, a senior can enjoy a garden, a preschooler can enjoy a garden. And it's flexible. You have different areas for space. If you just have a parking lot space, there could be a learning space or a little enrichment garden there. If you have a large or a small space, we'll talk about some ideas for large and small spaces because not everybody has a humongous space to have this gigantic, amazing HGTV garden of our dreams. So we'll talk about that too.
So why should your library have a literacy garden? So it provides a space for innovative hands-on programming for children of all ages. You can promote community involvement. You can work with local groups, school clubs, local businesses. And there's not just one type of gardens. So there's a teaching garden, which is a space for demonstrations, learning techniques, and tricks in the garden. A giving garden, so all the produce from the garden is free to the public or is offered to the public during a plant swap or a giveaway. So a literacy garden is a learning garden for reading, writing, and inspiration, and then a community garden. So produce from the garden is free to all members of a community who work in that garden or trade their labor or materials for crops. It also provides an outdoor space to inspire active and imaginative play. It gives your patrons the opportunity to learn about growing food, pollinators, the science of plants. It's also a space for patrons and the community members to unwind, so spend some time with loved ones in an outdoor space to read or just do whatever, even just hang out.
One of the things that you might be saying, one of the obstacles that might come whenever you're thinking about doing an outdoor space or a community garden is, I don't have the space, or I don't have a good plot of land beside my garden where this could work. But the short answer is yes, you do. And let me tell you why. A library garden, it really doesn't have to be large or expensive. Like, you can get items donated. If you have trouble getting items donated, maybe then it's time to think smaller and dial it back down. Maybe you just want an area where there's a water play area or a sandbox or just a few plants that are really sturdy and hardy, and there's maybe an outdoor space for kids to explore. Maybe that's just what you want to start with. It doesn't have to be all encompassing. If you just start with like a little hands-on area and can't get to the edible plants, that's fine. That's okay. And you can also look at what your community and your patrons want or they need. Do you have food insecurity in your community? Do you have a community who would like a gathering space but really doesn't have any outdoor options for space? We are Mississippi and we are rural, but that doesn't mean that we often have like a great outdoor space for learning. Some areas may not have public parks, or the public parks may be needing an upgrade. So this is something that you can think about as well for your community, just as a good option for them. You can gain data through surveys. I love a good Google form. You can ask your patrons questions while they're in the library, or you can just gather your demographic data from your cities. See what type of outdoor gardening programs what would they like to see? Are they missing some outdoor programs that they would like to see? Nature walks. It could even be a walking program, which we'll talk about later with STORYWALKs. Do you have any prospective volunteers or sponsors? Maybe you have a great local business or a community group who already wants to get involved, but they just don't know how they can get involved yet. This will be a great time to break the ice for that. Or you have some school groups. You have Future Farmers of America, or you have some other groups that are really wanting to get involved with a project like this, but you won't know until you reach out or they reach out to you. So this could be a really good first step. We'll move on.
There are so many reasons why gardening should be a part of the library's program. So you can, help your patrons gain nutritional literacy and improve access to fresh foods. You have the opportunity for hands-on programming for all ages. It provides you that outdoor space that you can use for other programs. So you can have a movie night, recipe exchange, your book club can be out there. It can tie into your special displays, so you can have displays inside the library about your garden. And again, it provides volunteer opportunities for all ages, so it can really help you build that relationship between your local school, community groups, or even businesses. You can get them to help in the garden, or just see if you can get garden items donated through these local businesses. Switch.
So as we mentioned before, nutritional and food literacy is something that Mississippi is a little bit behind in, and we're working to, really help with that issue. There are areas in our state where people don't have as great of access to fresh food as you would think. So looking at this demographic or this graphic, it really helps out to understand what is food literacy and how can we help with that, because we know about literacy with reading. So nutritional literacy or food literacy is a set of connected attributes. Like if you look here at this graph, you have knowledge about food. But okay, what does that mean? That means we know what healthy food is, how to get healthy food. It's your dietary behavior. It's attitudes about certain foods. You know, I know a lot of kids, and you may have been this way too, who didn't really want to eat their veggies. They hadn't been exposed to it. So I know I was one of those who didn't want to eat green food back in the day because I wasn't really exposed to it. But as you get more exposed to it and kids are able to try different things, they will kind of get a little bit more flexible with their eating habits. You also have cooking self-efficacy. This is a great opportunity for using what you have in the library, the skills you build in the literacy garden or the crops you grow, teaching people how to actually cook with fresh food instead of, you know, like I'm guilty of sometimes and just go into the microwave and warming you something up real quick. So there is a difference. Just using all these interconnected attributes and thinking about them with your garden is a great starting point to be able to help the community and really target those families and individuals who may need some assistance with food and nutritional literacy, just a little help.
Okay, so according to Feeding America's Map the Meal Gap Snapshot, nearly 560,000 people in Mississippi, and 180,000 of those, excuse me, were under 18, are considered food insecure. So this means they could not put enough food on the table for everyone in their household to live a healthy life. And food banks are great. They are a great service, but nutritional literacy means that people who are food insecure have access to fresh fruits, vegetables, and other healthy foods. Foods with preservatives, so packaged food, fizzy sodas, fast food, are presented as non-health sustaining food items. And families facing food insecurity may only rely on the food bank or SNAP benefits temporarily, so not a long-term solution. And so being, nutritionally literate helps them take those skills and, apply them to the rest of their life, not just, when they have access to that additional assistance. Switch.
Well, like Alex just said, you know, a lot of things are great. There are a lot of awesome services that we have locally, but they're not a long-term solution. So how can a library garden be a long-term solution? Because when we think about gardening, it's a great thought, but sometimes you can't get the support you need, or you can't get people to be interested in the program. So how a library garden can help bridge that food insecurity gap is teaching about the benefits of fresh food. You know, food is always going to be kind of a draw in for people to come to programs. So if you do offer maybe sampling the food that you cook or get from your garden, providing access to that fresh food in the library, that's a great way to get people to be interested and increasing their knowledge about where their food comes from, and teaching cooking skills and food prep. So with your garden, yeah, and with your outdoor space, you really want a few good programs to be able to draw a good group in. And some of these programs that could be really great in a community garden or a literacy garden, are inviting a speaker maybe in the garden to talk about farming, healthy food choices, cooking. Your Mississippi State Extension Office is a great resource. They usually have people who will come out and will help explain or talk about what the whole process is and just help you understand how your food is grown, because not all of us can go in the backyard and grow things. You know, I love to do it, but that's all good. You come to the library garden. You can have a mock grocery shopping trip with young children that helps them instill healthy choices. Get them to decide between the healthy foods that are grown fresh or healthy snack options, and maybe the foods with a little bit more preservatives and unhealthy stuff. Providing a pickup time or a day for families and individuals when it's time to harvest crops. That could be in the form of a plant swap, which we'll talk about later, how to do a plant swap for families whenever it's time to harvest the crops. You can get your local businesses and organizations involved to have a blessing box at the library. We've seen a few of them at libraries across the state. It's just a really cool way to be able to have something, an option for families if they do need something like food items or toiletry items, just to have those available. Some people keep them behind the desk in bags too. So that's another way that you can help spread the goodness of what comes from your library garden.
So when you're getting started and thinking about where you want to put your library garden, explore your library's outdoor area and select a space, or maybe you need multiple spaces that you think would be a good option for a library garden or even a naturescape. You can have a water play area, a sandbox, a micro garden. Come up with a cost analysis. So think about, how much is it going to cost to start up? What grants or, local business help and community and school group help can you get that assist with that funding and getting it started? So talk with those local groups, talk to your local gardening group, the Mississippi State Extension Service, school groups that may focus on gardening. Talk to them about volunteering, assisting with funding or supplying donations. And then, try and find free or low cost resources for supplies and seeds to help you get started with your garden.
Also, friends groups and all of those too are great. I always forget about our friends, but our friends are so important. So I meant to put that in that slide, but they are definitely great too. Alex created a wonderful handout that will be shared along with this presentation of all of our links that we provide throughout the presentation. These are just some useful, helpful links for getting started, because I think that's one of the hardest parts. Especially with finding your resources. So this is 10 steps to creating a community garden. It's very great, just bam, 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 bit by bit, bullet by bullet, helpful list to get started. Food nutrition resources from the USDA, transforming your library, how some libraries were able to do it, and just a few other like funding resources and programs that could be helpful for you while you're getting started. And those will be provided.
So once you have your space kind of picked out, you can sort of gauge staff interest in your garden and see who's willing to help out where. You can use a Google form, maybe do a paper survey, or even just talk to them, kind of one-on-one. If no one is super interested, maybe start a staff schedule for tending the garden and hosting programming, so at least it's evenly distributed if no one is just super passionate about it, which they will be. That won't be a problem. So again, talk to volunteer groups and gardening clubs, see what they recommend. Call local businesses like nurseries, home improvement stores, garden centers to see if they'll sponsor your garden or provide any donations. Talk to the state extension center or wildlife departments, because they can be an excellent source of information, resources, and assistance. You can contact them and see if they have programs ready made and they can come to you in your library. You can offer sponsorship bricks, plaques, or signs to show what local business contributed what and how they contributed to their community.
I just wanted to talk a little bit about this garden down here. This is the Children's Learning Garden at Pearl Public Library in Pearl, Mississippi. They're part of the Central Mississippi Regional Library System. And this garden is sponsored by the Spring Lake Garden Club, as well as the Rankin County Master Gardeners. It was the winner of the Fisher Garden Center Award, the National Garden Clubs Incorporated, back in May of 2018. And this garden was such a special place. I was the youth services supervisor, like I said, at Pearl, but it was just speaking from the benefits of a literacy garden. I think it was such a great place to have for programs with both kids and adults. And it was really nice. You see these back windows back here. It was really nice just being able to have kids look out and see that garden. Sometimes it would be full of bees. Sometimes it would be raining out there, and you'd catch kids just like with their hands pressed up against the glass looking at it. So it was a really special place. And there's all types of gardens at libraries across the state that are like that. And these are included, these links as well will be included. These are just some resources for free seeds. Who does not love free seeds? This free seed project is absolutely great. There is a wait list for this one. It's the Live Like Allie project. They will send a free packet of seeds for community garden projects, literacy garden projects, as long as it's any project that is going back to the community and people can contribute to the garden. It comes with like carrots, radishes. It's kind of a mixed bag. So just be ready to receive whatever. The U.S. National Agriculture Library also is a resource for heirloom seeds. Now, they are a little harder to get free seeds from just because you have to describe your project in detail. And usually when you fill out this form, when you go to this link and fill out this form, they usually want a good detailed description of what your project's going to be. So if you do sometimes say like, I'm just going to create a literacy garden or a library garden, you may not have as good of a chance at getting your seeds. But if you go into a little bit more detail and say, well, we want to provide programs for the public, we're trying to, inhibit as much food insecurity in Mississippi. So just kind of get creative with your descriptions. And the National Gardening Association has swaps online where you can swap seeds, plants as well. And there's a forum if you go to this link. Local groups too, 4-H is great. They do a lot of volunteer help. They have students who can help, sometimes teachers who can supervise. FFA is another one, Future Farmers of America. Rotary for money or help volunteering. You go and present your project to Rotary. Some people may be super interested in that. By county sometimes has a master gardener program, but I do know the Mississippi Master Gardeners are through the Mississippi State Extension Office. We do have a Rankin County Master Gardener that I'm aware of, but I do know that throughout the state in different counties, there are master gardening clubs you can reach out to. And either your local gardening and civic organizations or just local businesses for those things like dirt, soil, lumber. I don't know if you've realized how expensive lumber is right now, but it's like gold. So I don't know if you could get that donated, but it's definitely a need in a literacy garden or community garden of any kind.
So in your library garden, something that I would really like to encourage you to use is native plants. So they are an excellent addition to any library garden. So they require less upkeep once they are established because they are native. They are used to the soil, they're used to the weather, they're used to everything. They don't require as much fertilizer because, again, they're acclimated to the soil. They know what it's like. They're basically designed to live here and to be beautiful. The pictures on the slide are of native plants and, a native butterfly, the painted lady. But who would have thought that such beautiful things would just grow here naturally? They attract and support native wildlife. So the insects and birds and everything that you already have around your library are going to also be accustomed to eating and using these plants. So they're going to be drawn to your library's garden. If you maybe can't get more native plants or don't have a huge budget to buy plants, you can preserve existing patches of native plants instead of adding new ones. So if you wanted to just, stop cutting one area of your library's land, you could do that and just see what grows, see what thrives there. But they're just such a good addition. They're so good for all the insects and everything, and they're so pretty. And again, they're going to require a lot less work than plants who aren't accustomed to living here, who are, maybe acclimated to it not being 100 degrees for 6 months out of the year. Switch.
That is such a great idea that Alex talked about, because I didn't think about preserving existing patches of native plants. You can preserve what you have and not even have to go through the work, put a bench there. So yeah, that's fantastic. So we talked about native plants and how beneficial they are for your literacy garden. Well, where can you find them? In wild areas, a big rule is don't dig them up. They're already present in those wild areas and part of that habitat. So it's really important that you don't move those plants. Just let them be where they are, and see what grows if you do leave an area alone. I thought that was a fabulous idea, just with people, if you don't have the space, or don't have the budget right now. Native plant sales, you can visit your local arboretum or a nature center for a schedule through the Mississippi Native Plant Society. The Mississippi Extension Office has a good list of native plants too, and sometimes they'll do sales, and so that's really cool to keep track of. Local gardening centers as well. We've listed a few around the just here in the area, South Mississippi or near Southeast Mississippi, Lucedale, in Jackson. the Oxford in Bloom on Lamar. And there is a link here for more resources where you can get native plants. These gardening centers actually offer native plants and not just the plants that you sometimes see in a lot of gardening centers that aren't native or have been, modified a lot. So this is wonderful.
So one of the ways you can use, native plants and even non-native plants, but it's in a pollinator garden. So using native plants in this pollinator garden, of course, attracts pollinators and attracts native pollinators especially. So flowering plants provide food for pollinators, from spring through the fall. 1/3 of human food comes from plants that require pollinators to produce fruits and seeds. And these gardens also provide host plants for caterpillars, homes for other non-invasive species. So it gives them food, it provides them with a place to live. And you may be wondering, why do we need to help these pollinators out? But there have been a lot of recent threats to pollinators like habitat loss. As wildlife habitats are converted for other uses, their food sources and homes are destroyed. Pesticides are a big problem. Even just exposure can kill or, gradually weaken these insects. There are invasive species, so plants and animals that are introduced to habitats where, the bugs who are accustomed to being here aren't used to them and can't defend or can't eat them. And so they really need you to have these little safe spaces where they can come and live. And your patrons can go and look at them because it's not just bees. There's way more pollinators than just bees. There's hummingbirds, butterflies, any bug who goes in and sits on a plant and then goes and sits on another plant can help pollinate stuff.
So we talked about going back and forth and giving seeds and plants as a resource or as help for your patrons. And a few ways to do this are seed catalogs and plant swaps. This could be really great for native plants as well for seed catalogs, especially if you have a group. Like I'll use the Rankin County Master Gardeners as an example. They were wonderful enough to donate a lot of these seeds that are here in this seed catalog. We had the Pearl Public Library. They were good enough to donate those seeds, and we separated them out by flowering seeds and by vegetables or edible plant seeds. For native plants, it could be the same. You have a lot of great groups that collect these seeds for native plants. And like we said before, COVID-19 has just changed so many families' food security. Families who knew where their next meal was going to come from before COVID that may not be the case today. And so it's really good for the library if we are a community center, if we are a center for people to come to, and just to be able to get that security for their next fresh meal. That'd be awesome. Offers seed catalogs to participants where they can come through and browse different types of seeds. You can have a book like we did here where it describes the seeds. It describes what kind of watering schedule they need, what kind of care they need, because a lot of them fail. A lot of seeds fail just because you don't know how much to water them, or it's a new plant that you're not familiar with. So that just lets you learn a little bit. Just look through the book quickly. You can take a screenshot of it, of what those plants need. Plant swaps offer plants, food items, and sometimes even seeds. This is an example of a plant swap that I liked. They just literally left fruits and vegetables out on the table and said, take what you need. You could also do this with baskets in front of fresh fruits or vegetables for kids who come into your library, just like they do at Kroger or grocery stores for fresh fruit for kids. Or you can do plant swaps that are in bags, where you have a bag of food items and fresh fruits or vegetables, and you just give them to each of your families that walks into the library if you don't feel comfortable having a table where people can touch all the food. I understand that things have changed that way. So partnerships with gardening groups, like I said, local farmers markets are great, and seed suppliers.
So one of the programs that you can do in your outdoor space, even if you don't have a garden, is a story walk. So this is a way for children and adults to enjoy reading and the outdoors at the same time. So laminated pages from a children's book are attached to wooden stakes, which are installed along an outdoor path. So as you go down the path, you are directed to the next page in the story. So these can be placed, along a trail or walkway in a park, around the perimeter of the library, just wherever you have space. It's just, laminated pages stapled to stakes, or you can build your own setting. So you could use, recycled campaign signs or anything like that to attach your pages to your stakes. So MLC has pre-made StoryWalk kits available for checkout, so you don't have to do any of the hard stuff. You can just put them out and have your patrons enjoy them. So make sure you do give credit to Ann Ferguson, who developed this idea, and you can email her. Her email is on there, and it should also be on our handout if you are interested.
These are just a few photos that we've collected across the state. We've been seeing some great gardening and story walk programs. This kind of gives you an idea of what a story walk or even just a micro garden can look like. There's the City Park Story Walk with the Brandon Public Library that goes through the city park. It's wonderful. It's got a trail as well that families can follow or that children can follow and read the story as they go along. And you see the settings that were built here. This was a project through the Boy Scouts, and they were able to build these amazing settings that you can change out easily when you want to change the story. Or it can be as simple as laminating pages, as you see here. Laminating pages for a story walk is just passing it through a laminator. Recycling old campaign signs are great, or foam board, and just putting them out. Or having, like, here's a great example, the Pass Christian City Hall Public Library City Court area has a great garden. Even if it's just like your sign mixed with, your sign has some native plants for pollinators, and then you have a small garden in the back. It can always be flexible. This gives you a few examples of what those could look like.
So when you're planning your story walk, there are some things that you need to consider. So first off is the location. Of course, location is essential. So you need to find an easily accessible spot for your story walk, even if it's not on the library garden or on the library property. Consider shading. What the terrain looks like. Is it ADA accessible? Think about the elements. If there is a trail or a sidewalk that people can use, or a concrete walking path. How many times are you going to change it out? Weekly, twice monthly, monthly. Who is going to maintain it? Are you going to get your staff to go out and change them out and make sure everything's straight and no pages have blown away? Are you going to get volunteers to do that? Are you just going to let the community let you know when something needs to be fixed? How much is it going to cost to maintain? If you need to replace and use the parts, what's your schedule going to be? How are you going to gather your data? Are you going to have maybe a QR code at the end where people can go in and be linked to your website or be able to fill out a Google form? Are you going to do paper slips or surveys? So these are all things that you just need to consider when you are putting this together.
And here, these will be included as well. This is just some story walk resources that can help you create your story walk. Creating an engaging story walk too is important. Location is so important, like Alex said. Can everybody access it? Grandparents with their young kids, that's something to consider too. StoryWalk official website and books are available for download and print. So there are some that are already ready for you. All you have to do is laminate them. They can be accessed through that link. There are some like certain real estate signs and frames that you can use that are pretty cheap and really easy to just pop something in there like a laminated story. We also, this is very exciting, have StoryWalk kits available for checkout through the Mississippi Library Commission. You can contact our digital consultant, Charlie Simpkins. There's his email right here and his phone number. So if you have questions about these or if you would like to check them out, please reach out to him. We do have several titles available for checkout for those StoryWalk kits. We have the Gruffalo, Not Norman, a Goldfish Story, Kitten and the Night Watchman, and How to Fold a Taco. So there are a lot of great books that are available with our StoryWalk kits, but these are just some resources that can help you get started.
So even if you don't have a library garden, it is still important to teach children, and their caregivers about being environmentally conscious. So you can reuse household items like clean empty containers, jars, metal and plastic lids, string and ribbon, and repurpose these into cute, useful crafts. Use what you have. Don't be afraid to change a few things to accommodate what materials you have and the skill levels of your patrons. You can get your patrons to keep their recyclables and bring them in and donate them for programs.
So here's just some other recycled ideas. Wind chimes are great garden decor. They're always a hit, and it's very easy to create wind chimes with just anything you have laying around your house. You can use a large plastic lid, like from a can, like a coffee can or something like that. Use that as your top. I don't know why I'm pointing at the screen, but use that as your top, like a coffee can, or even a big, like an embroidery hoop would be really cool, or even a pot or a branch. You'll need push picks or an ice pick or something sharp and pokey to poke holes into the plastic lid for the top so that you can tie your strings down and make sure that you get to loop all your fantastic things that cling together. We have some ideas. These are all links too that can be provided if you would like to use any of these. This is the rainbow button wind chime. It's made from buttons of different colors, and these are the caps, the lids from mason jars, and they just painted those, and they make a really cool metallic sound when they come together. You can do a DIY wind chime. I love this one as a children's librarian because I had so many marker tops that they didn't have a marker, and I didn't know where the marker went. And so this kind of blew my mind, and I love that because I'm sure those will make a great noise. You could even mix certain things, like you could do the marker tops, and let's say you have a bunch of like old paper clips or spoons or something, you can always tie them up and see what sound they make. I love the recycled bottle cap wind chime. This is made of bottle caps and buttons, so you have different sounds. And the keys, I have probably a cup of keys that I have no idea what they go to at my house. So why not just paint them up and tie them to a stick and make a cool wind chime. I made one recently with shells. So if you go and collect shells on the beach, sometimes you'll get lucky and they will have a hole in them. You can easily just tie string through that. They make a really cool sound. So I think hearing the different sounds just neat for kids, even adults, because I'm fascinated by it.
So if you do decide to have, some native plants in your garden or specifically a pollinator garden, there are a few passive program ideas that you can use. You can create signs that point out the different native plants and insects. Or you can, decorate name plaques and have people go out, and I guess this is less passive, but, have people go out and see if they can match them up. And so they can see, what bugs are at the library, and maybe they'll start noticing them at their house, and so they'll just get a lot more familiar with their environment. You can create solitary bee houses using bundles of natural reeds, hollow stems, or cardboard and paper tubes. So you can place those in your garden and watch the bees, see how many bees come and live in your house. I actually got my mom one of these for her birthday. We already have 4 bees who live in our bee house. Because this also gets people familiar with different kinds of bee species. I didn't know there were solitary bees who just live by themselves, which, more power to you. But they can come and live in your garden. And if you do want to help out bees, and not just bees, but just insects in general, you can make a bee waterer. This is super easy. All you need is a ceramic plate or a shallow bowl, pebbles or marbles, and water. So just put the pebbles in the bowl or in the little plate. You could also use like a drainage plate from a pot, and fill it with water. Don't fill it all the way up, but the marbles and the pebbles serve as a place for the bees to stand because they can't swim. So they can just go and, land on the little marbles and get some water. And so you'll probably also see butterflies doing this, coming in and getting some water. So it really just helps out all the little insects in your garden. Change out the water frequently so you can avoid mosquitoes. And this is great, if you do it in the library, you can have your patrons go out and place them around the garden, or they can take them home and help out bees in their backyard. But it's just a really cute, really easy craft that does good for all the little bugs who are going to come in your garden.
So as with everything, you got to keep safety first in mind. And I know some of y'all might be thinking, this is a garden. How can you get hurt in the garden? But I will tell you from experience, there are ways to get hurt in the garden. So I definitely encourage people to take a little time to learn about your plants. Both common, beneficial, harmful ones. We have a lot of different plants here in Mississippi and especially in the South. So sometimes knowing what to touch and what to stay away from is a good thing. Like 3 leaves, stay away from it. It might be poison ivy. 5 leaves, it's Virginia creeper. So just the easy wives, little rhymes and wives' tales to learn about that. Sometimes they can be true and good though. Use gloves when weeding, digging in the dirt. This is important for like little hands, you know, they get blisters. You might touch something thorny. Just protecting your hands and your feet. Wear good closed-toed shoes. I am guilty of going barefoot in the garden or wearing sandals in the garden. That's not good. Don't do that. I'm learning now. So definitely check out what plants have different watering routines. Some plants do not like to be watered that much, and you'll find that out. Or some plants like to be watered every day and are high maintenance. So definitely read up on your plants, your seeds that you get, so that you can have those care requirements. And set general rules and guidelines for the garden, especially with kids. You may want to start like a schedule, like maybe we're going to water the garden at 2 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And that way everybody kind of knows what's going to happen. What are some things that go on in the garden? When can they help? When can they come by and help? When can they take things from the garden? If it's just come by and take whatever's fresh, cool. If it's, hey, we want to be able to harvest this ourselves and give it away at a plant swap, make sure that your people know that and your community and your patrons know that. Just so that there's rules and routines for your garden.
So we have some more links if you just want to learn more about your library garden. So we do have some library garden, specific links on here. These are going to be on that handout that Kristen has mentioned a couple times. There's also, some resources for using native plants and using them in your landscape. There's a link on here about how to use old books to make good garden mulch, which I'm sure you have in excess of old books at your library. So, using native plants in your landscape, using them in your garden. It also has some links about butterfly plants and Mississippi butterflies, so you can learn about those as well.
So this is just some great feedback a few libraries have gotten over the month that they have been doing story walk. Northeast Regional Library recently did a story walk at all of their branches. They have had great support from the community. Some have said, don't change a thing. This is wonderful. Some have given their own ideas back to it. So, if you do decide to do an outdoor space or a garden, or even just a story walk, there are so many different ways to get more numbers for your programming. Northeast actually gathered their data in 3 ways. You could do a QR code. So at the end of the story walk, they would do their QR code. You could go to the library, and if you went to the library and told them that you did the story walk, they would give you a set of park ranger or forest ranger finger puppets. So that was cute. Or you could just call the library, and that was how they gathered their data. So don't let this be a thing where you're like, oh, this isn't going to add really much to our program. It definitely will add to your programming, and there are ways you can catch that data. People said that it was so great to see their children outside, away from electronics. You can do story times outside. It's endless. And patrons do get back suggestions, like really good suggestions. This one was have a list of things that kids can look for in the story while they're reading it. Maybe some things they can look for outside while at the story walk, or some things in the garden. Maybe they can play I Spy. So it's really just about using your creativity and just letting it go. They've given some great feedback there. So well done to all the libraries that have done story walks and gardens. It's been wonderful to see everybody's pictures of that.
So some final thoughts. Starting a literacy garden does not have to be a huge undertaking. So you can get support from your local and school groups, work with your community, build those bridges, because you can, use these connections in future programs. So reach out to seed suppliers. You can get free seeds online. Reach out to local businesses, see what you can get donated, and make this an opportunity to build your connections with your community.
So Alex and I just want to say thank you and happy gardening, because life's a garden, you got to dig it. So if you have any questions, thoughts, if you just want to chat about library gardens, literacy gardens, outdoor programs, I know some things are changing, because if you're doing your programs inside, that's awesome. But if you do have big programs, maybe outdoor options are something you're wanting to look at. Feel free to reach out. Here's all of our information, mine and Alex's. And for StoryWalk kits, definitely contact our digital consultant, Charlie Simpkins. There's his information right here. We're available to answer your questions for all of your gardening needs. Alex, do you have anything you would like to say?
I don't, but thank you so much for watching this webinar, and I hope your garden is beautiful and you have lots of bees there.
Thank you so much, everyone. Until next time. Bye.